organization is focused on, and a little bit about an entire division, a center that you all have dedicated to the anti-trafficking cause.
Right. So welcome, thank you for having me. So America First Policy Institute is a nonprofit think tank, and we're tasked with developing policies from 23 established centers that we have. So everything from the economy to homeland security to healthcare and others. But we developed what's called the America First Agenda, which is a 10-pillar agenda, which are issues that at least 80% or more of the American people support. One of the most important pillars of that agenda, especially mine, is what I believe to be one of the most important, securing the border, combating the drug cartels, and ending, not combating, ending human trafficking. Our executive director, Chad Wolf, was Secretary of Homeland Security in the previous administration, and as Nilsa said, we have about 70 senior White House staff, and even more that have worked in other White House administrations. I served under both President Bush's and the former administration. But again, we were focused on developing an agenda that really puts the people first. I know that when we talk about Donald Trump and the Trump White House, etc., we always talk about or some people talk about nationalism or other things, and really what we truly focus on is putting the American people first. And this particular issue is one that a lot of Americans care about, and it is a problem. I know we have talked over the past few days about sex trafficking, but I'd like to give some context to the numbers, right? The drug cartels are making about the Mexican drug cartels.
So we're just zoning in on the Mexican cartels.
The Mexican drug cartels, right, are making $14 million per day on human trafficking. We know that there's about 500,000 that we know trafficking victims in the U.S. Since January of 2021, when the Biden administration came on board, you have about 360,000 unaccompanied children that we have identified. These are the ones that we have identified, not the ones that we haven't identified at the border. And yes, even though we're focused a little bit on sex trafficking of those numbers is 71% of victims in the United States. So we still are kind of a little bit lacking in the discussion of forced labor, so trafficking for forced labor, and indentured servitude. In our backyard, there's a number of diplomats that actually have young girls who are trafficked, who are serving in their official residences. I mean, I know because I was a press secretary under the Bush administration at the Department of Justice, and I had a briefing. My first classified briefing was on a professional coyote ring that was bringing girls as young as 5 years old, for brothels, for strip clubs, for pornography, for forced labor, and to supply diplomat homes here in New York and in other embassies or missions of foreign countries in the United States. At the time, I did not have any kids. I had an 18-year-old girl, and she's my world, and 2 boys, and they're my world, she's my world. That first briefing that I got, I almost threw up because of the horrors that I saw of people doing inexplicable things to anyone, period, but to girls and boys as young as 5 years old. So I made it my mission at that day that if there was something that I could do to help, I would. I would say that obviously that's the focus of AFPI, a main focus. And I know a lot of people know City Alici, who's a senior advisor to Bob Unanue, the CEO of Goya Foods. largest Hispanic-owned company in the world. And Bob's leadership, he's the chairman of my Hispanic initiatives at AFPI. And Bob has been instrumental in these issues. Goya Cares, their foundation arm, does a number of activities on human trafficking, and frankly, he was one of the catalysts to make this movie, or to finish making the movie Sound of Freedom, which has been incredibly successful.
Yes.
Now I think they're up to $130 million in the box office, and it's bringing this issue, this very important issue, finally to the mainstream, so that the American people do not turn a blind eye, and really people around the world, so they don't turn a blind eye and know that it's happening here, it continues to happen in broader numbers, and we need to figure out a strategy with our partners in around the world, but especially in the Western Hemisphere, that this evil needs to stop, and policies and coordination between our countries need to happen so that no other child becomes a victim.
I'll never forget when news broke on a young little girl, I think she was about 9 years old, who was received at one of the border facilities. And when they gave her medical attention, they found 67 different DNA samples in her body of the evidence, the residue of her rapist. This little girl had been raped by 67 different men at the age of 9, 10 years old. And she's just one of the thousands of accompanied minors that our facilities are overflowing with. And
mind you, that number was within a week. So within a week, that little girl had 67 samples of DNA inside of her, which is, I can't even imagine one, but 67 in 1 week is something that, as much as we would like for it to be a silver lining, and that we can treat the victims and support the victims, etc. How do we come back from that? I can't comprehend how someone would do something like that. And we need to say, you mentioned this yesterday, it's not just about support for the victims, but how are we ensuring that the perpetrators are not doing this? And to make sure that we create an environment where this doesn't happen to anyone ever again.
Amen. And talking about stories of this girl, I know Sam was very inspired by the reality, by the horrors of what these girls go through, what the exploitation is like. Share with us how this reality has changed your life for being a champion for this cause in everything you do and you did as Miss Connecticut.
Well, I'm a daughter, so I come from a country where women typically don't have a voice, and typically being able to do something like this isn't very much seen. But when I was 18 years old, I was crowned Miss Connecticut Teen USA 2020, and I knew that that's a really big responsibility, and it's a huge honor because I have so many young girls who are looking up to me and want to hear what I have to say. So I became a champion for so many different issues around the globe, but I specifically chose human trafficking because I don't see many young people speaking about this issue. And I feel like that is incredibly important. A lot of people told me when I was saying that I'm going to take on the issue of human trafficking, oh, isn't that, too tough of an issue? You're so young, are you sure? How are parents going to have, you talk to their kids about this? Aren't their parents going to want to protect them from hearing this sort of stuff? And my response was always no. The truth is I've heard so many stories of girls who are 15 years old and being trafficked. I heard of a 4-year-old girl in Texas who was trafficked by her mom for drugs. And I even heard of a 6-month-old baby girl trafficked by her parents. They had men come over to their home to abuse their 6-month-old baby and filmed it for profit. So the truth is we can pretend that it's taboo and not talk about it, or we can have these conversations, even though they're difficult, And we need to have more young people a part of that conversation. So as Miss Connecticut Teen USA 2020, I started a video series. It was during the middle of a pandemic, so I wasn't able to really go out into the community, but I took that time to start a video series interviewing advocates, survivors, and other leaders to educate people on human trafficking. I hosted virtual events. Rosie was one of my speakers on my panel. And I was also able to educate so many young people on this issue. Most recently, I also interned at the Hispanic Health Council of Connecticut, and I developed an anti-trafficking program for high school students. In Hartford, Connecticut, it is an inner city with a very large immigrant community. There's a lot of young girls there who are actually trafficked by the 50-year-old Hartford local men. So when I spoke to these principals about going to the schools, the principals were really eager about me coming in because I'm young and it was a fresh face, and because the students can connect with me a lot better than they can connect with other people who they just feel they're going to come in and just lecture them. So I came in, and actually after just one presentation I did at a high school, we were able to identify 2 victims of human trafficking after just one presentation. So it just goes to show you how important it is that, high schools and schools across the country, especially in inner cities, have education programs and also have some sort of, education going on to teach these kids and help, identify more victims. Just because of my one presentation, we were able to find 2 girls that were trafficked and get them, into the proper resources, and that was something that the school was really thankful. So obviously on a bigger level, I can imagine that it can help even more people. But it's really, really important that young people, use our voices and, we stand up for what's right. We see so many youth at the forefront of so many important social issues like feminism, the Black Lives Matter movement, environmental justice, and I think it's time that youth stand up to also fight against human trafficking too. That's really what I want to see more of. I want to see more hashtag movements like you see for others. I want to see social media pages, social clubs. I want to see more teens talking about this. I'm 21 years old now, but in the 4 years since I was crowned Miss Connecticut Teen USA, I've seen a lot more young girls come to use their own platforms to talk about this issue, and a lot of young girls have told me that I've inspired them to start speaking up about this. So I really want and I hope to see more youth joining nonprofits and working alongside so many amazing advocates and experts that are out here. I want to see youth championing for passing legislation and being there to help fight against this. So that's really what I hope to do, and I'm so grateful that as Miss Connecticut Teen USA I was able to do that, and I hope to continue to do that one day as a future attorney and possibly a politician. So thank you.
Is, first of all, he's going to call us servant. He's going to call us in Spanish mayordomo. That means we're stewards. It's all about stewardship. It's all about management. What did you do with what I entrusted you with in the time I gave you on earth? And what we do now will echo into eternity. And one of the things that I think about, the fact that we had a task force under the previous administration to tackle the trafficking crisis, and then this administration completely did away with that task force. It's not a political thing, it's a stewardship thing, it's a management. So we need better management, right? So we need to pray for this administration, and we need to do everything we can that at the local, at the state, and at the federal level, we as American citizen voters get behind putting good stewards, competent stewards that can see, because it's not about red and blue, it's about right and wrong. And now it's about normal versus crazy, and now it's about literally protecting our families from the highest level of networking of predators. So we need to do everything we can to bring stewardship back to its highest level. And we can do that in proactivism. And I love that Sam and Morgan are behind youth movements to take on this conversation of trafficking, because their generation is the most vulnerable to this crisis. So Morgan, share about what you're doing and the movement you're behind with mobilizing youth as well.
So my name's Morgan, and so full-time I actually live in DC and do spacecraft engineering, but on the side, over the last couple years, I started serving Unbound Now, which is a global anti-trafficking movement. We started in 2012 because our founder, she started traveling around the world and seeing trafficking everywhere she went. Uganda, there's child soldiers. In India, there's the brothels. And much like her, I have the privilege to go to 80-something countries, and I see it everywhere. I've been in El Salvador when I was 13. I've seen it. And then when it came to Ukraine, I flew to Ukraine to respond to the war, and there's just women crossing the border. The men have to stay and fight. There's a language barrier, there's trauma, and suddenly you see so much trafficking happening on the border. So I called Susan, the founder of Unbound Now. What can we do? And over the last year and a half, we started an office in Europe, so it's now Unbound Now Europe. We're working in Poland, Moldova, London, and across Europe. But it's been such a joy and privilege to serve with Unbound Now. I just want to share some of what they're doing, because I think there's ways that we can reproduce it in our communities as well. And so that's the heart behind Unbound Now, reproducible model to walk with people out of trafficking. The identification and recovery of victims is so valuable, and we need more of it. And then the journey just begins then for the victim. And so Unbound Now, kind of their model is they have 3 keys, 3 lanes of effort that they do. And so part of that is youth prevention. So just like you said, I couldn't agree more. We go into the schools, and almost every time we go to give these presentations and speak, someone comes forward admitting or not even realizing that they've been being trafficked or being abused. We've developed a curriculum approved by the Texas State Governor's Office called Sentinels to be distributed to middle schools and high schools for training. We have what we call EIP specialists, so early intervention prevention. And so we use it's a metric that we use. It was developed out in California that you can have a student run through, and it'll identify how close they are to the signs of being trafficked. And so if anyone comes in the category of possible, we assign an EIP specialist to them, start walking with them, with their family, go into the juvenile detention centers and places where vulnerable children might be to stop it before it happens. So that's one area. The other area is outreach, where we go into communities. We've developed training, both virtual or we'll come and do it live if you want. And it's specialized for doctors or for lawyers or for judges, to train them in the signs of what is trafficking, because so often we see girls put in prison when they've actually been trafficked, and then also just getting to work with those doctors. So when we receive a victim, we can send the victim towards that doctor, and they're not re-traumatized. The doctor knows the test to run, knows how to work with us or report the issue. We also specially train for lawyers and judges, and we realize that there's absolutely no way any of us are going to solve this problem on our own, but it takes a coalition. So we formed the Heart of Texas Coalition, and from there, that empowered those people in the coalition to go and empower other people. And so we actually just sent the district attorney from Texas, prosecutor and judge over to our office in Poland to train the judges and the lawyers and law enforcement in Poland to understand the signs of trafficking and then to work with us. And they were so moved by that. Poland is now passing their first child exploitation law, and they've asked us to write the enforcement plan of it and provide amendments. So that's coming out of the coalition of unity in Texas. And then the third line of effort we do, which is just most moving to my heart, is what we call survivor advocacy, and that's where we just walk with the survivors on their journey. So every time there's a sting or a raid, particularly in Texas, but also with third houses around the world, Cambodia, Indonesia, Mongolia, they do it there as well. So we reproduce this model wherever we go. The police will bring a unbound advocate on the sting or the raid, and so we are one of the first people that a victim might meet. If they end up in the prison, it's 2 a.m., by 8 a.m. the next day, we're there, and we're walking with them. If they end up in the hospital, we get a call. So we form partnerships within the community, so that we'll get called, and so we'll be there right away. And then we start walking with them, whether it's doctor's appointments, family visits, social services, getting licenses, court appointments, and we also have a underground where it's a 24/7 drop-in center. Anyone can ever come in, sleep there, spend the night, and then we also have a home for girls that are under the age of 18 to come and live out once they get out with trafficking.
Wow.
Great.